talk about a lot of wild stuff on this show, but today's deep dive might be the most fundamental yet. You sent over this article, The Science of Deep Breathing, and it really got me thinking breathing, we do it all day, every day without a second thought. But what happens when we actually do think about it?
It's pretty amazing, right? This simple acts, something we usually just take for granted, can actually be a powerful tool for well-being. What this article does really well is show us how.
Absolutely. I mean, we all know taking a deep breath feels good, especially when we're stressed. But I'm curious, before we even get into the why, can you explain what's actually happening in our bodies when we take a deep breath versus those shallow breaths we tend to do when life gets hectic?
It all comes down to using your diaphragm correctly, that big dome-shaped muscle that sits below your lungs. Shallow breathing, the kind we do when we're stressed or distracted, only utilizes the top portion of our lungs. It's inefficient.
I like where this is going. You're about to hit me with an analogy, aren't you?
Imagine you're making a cake, but you only use the top of the batter in the bowl. You'd miss out on all that richness below the surface. Deep diaphragmatic breathing is about accessing the full potential of your lungs.
Okay, now I'm hungry and intrigued. So deeper breaths mean we take in more oxygen, which is obviously good. But the article you read went way beyond that, right? There was a lot about the nervous system, which I have to admit I always find a little intimidating.
It's true. Breathing does more than just fuel our cells with oxygen. It directly affects our nervous system, specifically the parasympathetic nervous system. You might know it as the rest and digest system. You know, that sigh of relief you let out when you finally relax after a long day, that feeling of your heart rate slowing down, your shoulders loosening up. That, my friend, is your parasympathetic nervous system taking the wheel.
Okay, that makes sense. I definitely recognize that feeling. So are you saying that deep breathing can actually trigger that sense of calm, even if we're, say, in the middle of a stressful meeting?
Precisely. It's like having a secret weapon against stress. Think about it. Most bodily functions, digestion, heart rate, even to some extent, hormonal changes are controlled automatically. Breathing is one of the few we can consciously influence while it happens automatically in the background. Pretty cool, huh?
That is really cool. So by choosing to breathe deeply, we're essentially sending a message to our brain, telling it to chill out. We're hacking our own system. So we're not just calming our minds, we're actually creating a physiological shift in our bodies just by breathing deeply. I'm already feeling calmer just thinking about it. But okay, let's go back to the oxygen piece for a second. More oxygen has to be good for us on a purely physical level too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Think about what happens when you exercise. You breathe heavier because your muscles need more oxygen. Deep breathing, even when you're not working out, helps ensure your cells are well fueled, which is essential for everything from brain function to energy levels.
Right. But I have to admit, when I was reading this article, there was one claim I kept seeing about deep breathing that seemed, well, a little too good to be true. It was this whole idea of detoxifying your body just by breathing deeply. Is there any truth to that?
It's a common misconception, and the article did a good job of addressing it. Our bodies are incredibly complex, and detoxification is primarily handled by our liver and kidneys. Those organs are the real MVPs of filtering out waste products.
So our lungs are magical toxin filters.
Not quite. Their main job is gas exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide out. That said, managing stress, which deep breathing helps us do indirectly, supports those detoxification organs. When we're chronically stressed, our bodies prioritize the stress response over other essential functions, including detoxification.
So it's less about breathing out toxins and more about keeping our systems running smoothly so our liver and kidneys can do their jobs more effectively.
Exactly. It's all connected. But speaking of connections, we can't talk about deep breathing without diving into its impact on the brain. There's a reason why even ancient traditions recognized the mind-body connection when it comes to breathwork.
You're talking about that fascinating bit about the vagus nerve, right?
Yeah.
The article mentioned a 2017 study that showed deep breathing can significantly impact everything from anxiety and focus to even sleep quality. That blew my mind. What exactly is this vagus nerve and what makes it so important?
Think of the vagus nerve as the superhighway of your nervous system. It's this long nerve that runs from your brainstem all the way down to your abdomen, connecting your brain to your heart, lungs, digestive system, you name it. And here's the kicker. Deep breathing directly stimulates the vagus nerve.
So it's not just some abstract idea. There's literally a physical pathway from our lungs to our brains impacting how we think and feel.
Exactly. And it goes even further because the vagus nerve also connects to your gut. Some researchers believe deep breathing might even play a role in digestion. It really highlights how interconnected our systems are. Something as simple as changing our breathing patterns can have ripple effects throughout the body.
This is also fascinating, but it does make me wonder if deep breathing is this powerful. Are there any potential downsides we should be aware of? It almost seems too good to be true. It is kind of funny you should say that because as I was reading, I did start to wonder, can you have too much of a good thing?
It's a great question. And you know what? You're right to be curious. The article does mention that there can be downsides to overdoing it with deep breathing. Like most things in life, it's all about balance.
Okay, so walk me through this. How could something as seemingly harmless as deep breathing actually be bad for you?
Well, the article talks about something called hyperventilation, which I'm sure you've heard of. It's basically what happens when you breathe too rapidly or deeply, and it can actually throw off the balance of gases in your blood.
I'm guessing this is where carbon dioxide comes in.
Exactly. We mainly focus on oxygen, but carbon dioxide plays a critical role too. When we exhale, we release carbon dioxide, and our bodies need a certain level of it to function properly. When we hyperventilate and exhale too much carbon dioxide, it leads to a condition called hypocapnia.
Hypocapnia. That's when carbon dioxide levels in your blood drop too low.
That's it. And even though you might think having more oxygen would be better, this imbalance can actually interfere with the release of oxygen to your brain and tissues, which is why people often feel lightheaded, dizzy, or even anxious when they hyperventilate.
So it's almost like overinflating a balloon. At a certain point, it's just too much air and things start to go wrong.
That's a great analogy. The article also briefly mentions some alternative breathing techniques like the Buteyko method, which actually emphasizes controlled, shallower breathing. It's a reminder that there are many different approaches to breath work, and what works for one person might not work for another.
It seems like the key takeaway here is awareness, right? Paying attention to our bodies, not overdoing it, and finding what feels right for us.
Absolutely. And it's also a good reminder that while deep breathing can be incredibly beneficial, it's not a magic bullet. It's one tool among many for managing stress and improving our well-being.
That makes a lot of sense. So as we start to wrap up this deep dive, what are some final thoughts you want to leave our listeners with? What should they take away from all this?
I think the most important thing to remember is that something as simple and accessible as our breath can have a profound impact on both our bodies and minds. If we can learn to harness this power, even in small ways, it can make a world of difference in how we feel.
I love that. And as we wrap up this deep dive into the science of deep breathing, I want to encourage you all to try it out for yourselves. You don't have to become a yogi or a meditation guru to reap the benefits. Just a few minutes of intentional deep breathing throughout your day can make a real difference. Who knew something we do without thinking could be so powerful?